Hi, guys. I want to come to y'all today and I want to talk to y'all about police brutality in the media. Obviously, as you can tell by the general theme of all my stuff, I am again in law enforcement. So, this was a topic that was particularly hard for me to do and remain non biased and informative, like the purpose of this speech is. So, having said that, I'm going to try to give you guys statistics and facts so you can form your own opinion on how the media is portraying law enforcement and not just take my word for it at what I'm saying. So hopefully this can kind of clear that up for you a little bit. So, anyways, talking about police brutality in the media, if we go back and really understand police brutality, we kind of need to understand where it came from and when it first became a potential issue. So, the first time the media is actually documented talking about police brutality was in 1872 in the Chicago Herald. So, back in 1872, there was a prisoner that was beat pretty bad in the actual police department, and the Chicago Herald reported it. And that's the first time that the actual term police brutality was documented in the media. So, from there, where else have we dealt with police brutality in the media? Well, the height of police brutality probably came during the 1960s during the Civil Rights Movement. During the Civil Rights Movement, you had Rodney King, who mentioned police brutality numerous times throughout his speeches. And again, that's what kind of got it a big push, and that's what drove the media and kind of got the media flocking to this topic, to this hot topic during the 1960s and the Civil Rights Movement. Also, because of the Civil Rights Movement and all the police brutality that was going on and that agenda was being pushed, you had the formation of the Black Panthers. Black Panthers were kind of originated and formed to help represent the Black community because they felt that the disproportionate white police departments were singling out and targeting blacks and minorities. So they came about basically to help combat that. During the height of their involvement in the civil rights movement and the police brutality issue, you had about 35 Black Panthers members that were killed and 15 police officers that were killed. And of course, that was sensationalized through the media, which I think, if I dare state my opinion, I think helped perpetrate and escalate the problem as a whole. So let's kind of take this to a little bit more modern time, certainly than my generation. If there's one particular event that shapes and forms what we perceive as police brutality in my generation, certainly in my lifetime, it's the Rodney King incident. In law enforcement, we have a term, it's called pre-Rodney King and post-Rodney King. That basically determines how we conduct ourselves and basically how that entire culture and mindset changed after the Rodney King incident. So those of you that aren't familiar with the Rodney King incident and how the media portrayed it, basically in 1991 in Los Angeles, California, a black male named Rodney King, of course, had gone out to a night of partying, and he was pulled, or a traffic stop was initiated. Basically, he wouldn't pull over. He later admitted that he was intoxicated at the time, and he was afraid that if he got pulled over, that would affect his probation because he was on probation at that point in time, which it very possibly would have. So he fled from the police. So a short car chase ensued, and he was finally pulled over and detained. And during that incident, there were numerous people that were removed from the car. Rodney King was the last one to get out of the vehicle. He would not exit the vehicle. He was removed by force. And as I'm sure we've all seen the video, there was quite a bit of force that was used on Rodney King to try and take him into custody. Now, we can sit here all day long and we can discuss tactics and we can discuss why the officers did what they did and were they striking him in trained areas such as joints and the meaty parts of the body, or were they just basically going out on a witch hunt and taking out their frustrations on him? That's for a whole other topic. That's a whole other speech in itself, and one certainly that I don't have the time to dive into, nor is that the purpose of this speech to begin with. So I urge you to take it upon yourselves to investigate and look into that incident further on your own time. But having said that, unfortunately for those officers, or fortunately for the general public, however you want to look at it, whatever side you want to take, that incident was filmed. And that's the first time that incident of that magnitude had been filmed. And the next day, the incident was taken to the media, and boom, it was exposed. And you had the Rodney King incident being pushed on every major news network across the country. And everybody knows how history goes at that point in time. The officers were put on trial. They were acquitted. And of course, the riots ensued. And then you had the media's representation of the riots, which fed into it. And it was a major, major ordeal in Los Angeles for several years. And again, that incident itself and the way the media has portrayed it has affected law enforcement as a whole ever since, good or bad. So let me show you real quick a few numbers, if I could, to kind of help you form your own opinion on whether or not this case of police brutality and the way the media is portraying it is accurate, and let you kind of judge for yourself. So the last time the FBI got together and did statistics was back in 2014. Because of the way it's set up, it takes a few years for the statistics to come out. So the last actual numbers we have are in 2014. So in 2014, the FBI is telling us that there are 56 million police contacts, 56 million documented police contacts in this country. Now, for the sake of math, we're going to round the numbers to make it simpler to understand. So out of those 56 million contacts, let me stress that those are documented contacts. If you really look beyond that, there's probably a lot more, 2 to 3 times that, but we're going to look at documented contacts. So out of those 56 million documented police contacts, there were 26,000 filed complaints of police brutality on officers in America during that year of 2014. So 56 million contacts and 26,000 documented complaints. Well, out of those 26,000 documented complaints, there were just over 2,000 that were shown to be true and correct. So you have, again, let's break this down. You have 56 million contacts, and you have 2,000 that are shown to be where the law enforcement used excessive force was in the wrong. So if you do the math on that, that means that 0.0039% of the time, law enforcement is in the right when they're coming into contact with you. 0.0039% of the time. That means over 99% of the time, that police officer, when he comes into contact with you, is doing his job and doing it the way he's supposed to do it, and is doing it correctly. I think those are pretty good odds. I don't know anybody out here, anybody watching this, anybody critiquing this, that can tell me that they are over 99% successful in their job every single day. It just doesn't happen. So I think when you look at the numbers, that's pretty astonishing. Now, let me ask you, why then does it seem like we have such a big issue with police brutality in this country? Why does it seem like it's so rampant, like they like to tell you? Well, again, I blame it on the media. If you take those 2,000 contacts where the law enforcement officer was in the wrong, and you force it down everybody's throat through social media, YouTube, Snapchat, Instagram, and you show those videos over and over and over again, and the major news networks grab a hold of it, and they force it down our throats, it appears like we have an issue when, if you look at the numbers, we really don't. And our law enforcement as a whole is doing an outstanding job based upon the numbers that are presented to us by the FBI. So I ask you, do we really have a problem with police brutality in this country, or is it a problem that the media has manufactured to help push their left-wing agenda, or just to simply help sell stories? Because let's be honest, that sort of thing sells. That 99% of the time where that officer goes out and does his job and does it correctly and files a police report and goes home isn't newsworthy. But that 0.0039% of the time where that officer uses excessive force makes major headlines. So again, I ask you, is police brutality the problem, or is the way that the media is representing and showing law enforcement the problem? So to close this out, I'm going to give you a perfect example of how the media can misrepresent something. I want you to stop and take a look in the year 1939, almost 100 years ago. Time Magazine's Man of the Year was Adolf Hitler. And we all know how that came out. So having said that, I think it's safe to say that the media can get things wrong. Anyways, thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you learned something. God bless.